Hi, my name's Lee Matthews and I'm a physiotherapist, and this is Pilates Rehab Relax. And today I'm going to guide you through 5 exercises that you can do which will help to improve the stability of your wrist. So these exercises are aimed at people that might have previously had an injury to their hand or wrist. It might be you've had an old wrist fracture, or you've sprained your hand or wrist in some way. Over time, when we're not using our hand so much, the muscles around the arm can also get weak, and then when we go to try and get back towards normal daily activities like lifting a saucepan, like peeling vegetables for instance, you might feel that the wrist is weaker or less comfortable at doing that task. These 5 exercises are aimed at improving the strength around the wrist, and in hopefully doing so it will make your daily activities a little bit easier. And don't forget, if you find today's video useful, click the like button. If you'd like to keep up to date with my latest content, then click subscribe. And if you've got any suggestions or feedback or words of encouragement, then leave a comment below. So throughout today's exercises, I'm going to be using the edge of a table here. I'm going to place my forearm on the edge of the table, but I want my wrist joint to be clear of the table's edge. So if it's too close, it's going to interfere with the movement. But if I make sure that my wrist joint is away from the edge of the table, it's going to give the support of the table, but it's not going to get in the way of me doing the exercises. So the first movement we're going to do today is called wrist extension. And that's taking the wrist in this movement where it goes up with the knuckles towards the ceiling. So I'm going to drop down with the hand first of all, and then bring those knuckles up towards the sky, and then back down again. Now, I'm going to do about 10 of those, and that might be sufficiently challenging for you at the moment if you're at the early part of your rehab. So there we go, up and down. But what I would say is, if that's easy, find a small weight. So for you at home, it might be that you've got a small drinks bottle, it might be you've got a can of baked beans or something. I've got a slightly larger drinks bottle, it's 75 millilitres. But what you could even do if you found that was too much is you don't even need to have a full bottle of drink. It could be half empty, it could be barely full at all. But I'm going to hold on to that drinks bottle, and I'm going to bring my fingers, my knuckles up towards the sky, and then back down again. So aim to do 10 slow and controlled movements, bringing the hand up and then down again, and about that pace. So if we're aiming to do this at home as a regular exercise, I'd say definitely bare minimum of once a day. But once you're comfortable with that, you might even progress to doing them 2 or 3 times a day. And as these are strengthening exercises, we're aiming to do 10 repetitions of each of them. And there we go. So that was wrist extension. We're going to do something very similar for the second exercise, which is a movement we call wrist flexion. So wrist flexion is the opposite, is the counterpart to extension, and that's that moving the wrist up this way. So again, I'm going to keep my forearm resting on the table. I'm making a fist there, and I'm slowly bringing the knuckles up towards the sky and then down to the floor again. And again, that might be sufficient as a challenge for you at the moment. But if you find that's easy, we can use our weight that we were using. Again, it might be a can of baked beans, it might be a drinks bottle, just something that's a little bit of resistance there. And I'm going to bring that drinks bottle down and then back up again. There we go, and that's a movement we call wrist flexion. So the next movement we're going to focus on is one called pronation and supination, and that's that action of bringing the palm from facing down to the floor to up to the ceiling and back down again. So again, through this exercise, we're going to keep our elbow resting on the table. The reason being that if you don't have it anchored on the surface, it's very easy to compensate from the shoulder, particularly if we're stiff with our wrist movements. So you keep your forearm resting on the table, and you're going to turn the palm to the ceiling and then down to the floor again. Now, you might find that sufficiently challenging on its own, but we can start to actually add some objects which will make it more of a challenge. So I could, at a very easy level, use a wooden spoon. I'm trying to tap the end of the wooden spoon one side and then the other. So I can increase the resistance slightly by using something like a rolled up magazine. So again, keeping the forearm anchored on the table there and the wrist clear, so it's got freedom of movement there. I rotate first one way and then the other in a nice slow and controlled manner. And if you were progressing with this movement and you were doing quite well, you can progress that to using heavier objects. If you had a hammer, maybe a slightly smaller one than the one I found in my DIY box here, but maybe a small tack hammer or a really light rolling pin would be another thing. But again, I've now got that challenge of trying to maintain that slow controlled movement as the weight's trying to add resistance there. So be safe, and you know, we want this to be a slow controlled movement that doesn't leave you really sore afterwards. But what we're looking for is 10 movements of the palm turning first towards the ceiling or the sky and then down towards the floor. We call this movement ulnar deviation and radial deviation. I want to do an exercise with this as well. So we're going to keep our elbows resting on the table. We're going to aim for our forearm to be pointing directly up now, so up towards the sky. And the movement we're going to do is like a royal wave back and forwards there. So towards one side and then back to the other. And the aim being that your forearm stays completely still throughout the exercise. And I'd actually progress this to an exercise that I call the dart thrower. So you imagine that you're holding a dart in your hand and that you're throwing it at an imaginary dartboard. And again, 10 of those in a row, ideally. Okay, and that brings us on to our final exercise, which is one of pushing the wrist into a cushion. So I'm going to use a cushion for this exercise. You could use a pillow or anything that comes to hand. But what we're looking to try and do is to put our hand so it's lightly pressed into a surface, and then what I want you to do for me is to make circles. So imagine that you've got a ball bearing or a marble that you're trying to make go round in a circle, applying some gentle resistance. So I'm just lightly pushing into the cushion, and maybe when you've done a few circles in one direction, swap over and practice it in the other direction. So in its easiest form, I'd have the cushion out in front of you, and as you get better, it might actually be that you put more weight through it. So you could even do this stood up, leaning forwards into a cushion. At its most sort of advanced level, it would be load bearing at the same time as applying that pressure. But to begin with, start gentle, making some circles into a cushion. And there you go. That was 5 gentle exercises that you can do at home to improve the stability of your wrist. Well, how was it? Hopefully it was of use. If it was, don't forget to click the like button, and if you're interested in keeping up to date with my latest content, then click subscribe or leave a comment if you've got any suggestions or words of encouragement. I've also recorded a video which is some exercises for the fingers, and they're called tendon glides, so I'll put a link above and that might be of use to you if you're interested. But otherwise, thanks for watching and see you soon.